Howdy, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Shatter the Script podcast. I'm your host, Jared May, and this is another edition. Last week, we got off to a good start talking about the Diva Wars. I mean, this was Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, all those sorts of guys that are just making some noise behind the scene. And I talked a little bit about Texas A&M. This week, we're going to kind of do everything. I put a vote out there, a little poll about what we should shatter the script on this week. I got some Miami stuff, I got some top 25 stuff, and I got some Dak and CeeDee Lamb stuff. And so basically, I'm going to combine all three of those into this Shatter the Script episode, and in addition, do my 2020 Vision quarterback of the week, and a little fun segment at the end. I want to incorporate, obviously being an Aggie, I think it'd be fun to kind of incorporate a segment tailored to that, but in the broad spectrum of college sports. So we're going to be, I'm going to be incorporating a 12th men segment of my top 12 college football teams, and that'll be towards the end of the episode. And of course, later in the week, we'll evaluate through post the Shatter the Script stardom sit-ups from Hunter. So yeah, let's get into it. Like I said, you can follow us, your first-time follower, at Shatter the Script, on all platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube. You can find us there, or on TikTok and Instagram at Shatter the Script. A lot of fluidity there. It's a lot of maintenance work, believe it or not. So, all right, well, let's get into it. We're going to start off first. I think this is the one I want to talk about the most. Personally, I want to talk about this one the most because I'm sitting there at a bar watching this game. And, it's close to like 2 a.m. freaking football. And it's the college game day matchup from last week, week 6, Miami at California. And for those of y'all, I just want to make the record, I could keep it clean here, but I don't know what I'm trying to say. I want to set the record straight on Miami. I am not a hater of Miami, nor am I like a blatant hater of like Colorado, but I am a realize person. So when I go into this segment, it is not coming from like pure hate of the Miami Hurricanes. Ironic name for this year, but prayers out. I just think it needs to be talked about because it feels like, I don't know, the script needs to be shattered here. And so let's talk about Miami. Miami was down 38-10 to the University of California, Berkeley. And no one thought this was going to happen. They come all the way back and defeat California 39-38 with like 20 seconds remaining or whatever it was in the second half. Now, they looked unstoppable in the second half, and there was nothing stopping them. No penalties that were like deserving on their side. They had 2 controversial calls that ended up being no calls in this game. And a lot of you guys know what I'm talking about for one of them. But some of you don't know what I'm talking about for the second one, which is why I always say realize. The first one's targeting. Now, if you watch this play, the quarterback goes out for a scramble, and this dude comes in and just fucking pile drives this dude into the dirt. Right up in the head area, sending this dude, to the hospital. Freaking, he's out. No call. They reviewed it. No targeting. California gives the ball away. Miami gets the ball back later in the game, whatever it was, and they drive down the field with Restrepo. They're one of their star slot wide receivers, and just march down the field. 1, 2, 3, bang. Hey, we're in the red zone now. One score game, by the way. But at this time, it's 32-38. Miami is down with less than a minute left. I think they have 1 timeout remaining. They get inside the 5. And there's a picture of this. I think I've posted it on my X. They get inside the 5. And they run an RPO. For those, most of my listeners know what this is, but for those that do not know what an RPO is, it is a run-pass option. There is a rule that a lineman cannot be more than, I think, 2 yards down the field or 1 full yard down the field or else it is called a legal man downfield. You can't have linemen blocking downfield for pass plays, essentially. And RPO is a hybrid of that, where there's a gray area where you can get away with it. Search this on Google. I'm telling you, you're going to be like, what are we looking at? The touchdown play. This is what you call an RPO walk. It's kind of where you walk the running back towards the line of scrimmage. Anyway, he does that, and at last second, Cam Ward, the Heisman winning quarterback, or Heisman Award finalist soon to be, for Miami, pulls the mesh and chunks it to the flat for a touchdown. Oh my God, Miami's done it. The impossible. The Hurricanes have survived 2 weeks in a row. This is incredible. Are the Miami Hurricanes back? Meanwhile, you had two offensive linemen 6 yards downfield, right in front of the midfield referee. People are going to get mad at me because I said umpire. Right in front of him. And there's 15 seconds left. So yeah, like this would be a penalty, right? Not a big one, but a penalty. Bring the ball back, replay the down. Now you got to score in the goal line again. With Cam Ward, I'm sure it's probable he's going to score that. You know, whether it be via scramble or a fade ball or another RPO, maybe a swing pass to the running back. I get that. I am not an idiot. But game is game and fair is fair. You got to call that. That's a crucial down. They're 6 to 7 yards down the field. That's a legal man downfield. Clear as day. I've seen teams that run the RPO in the NFL and in college periodically or very often, and they're called for like 1 or 2 yards downfield. This is a new part of the game. I get it. But it's been around long enough to get penalized for that. So I don't like the win. I really don't like the win for Miami. I don't think they should have. I think they got favorable calls late. I guess that's part of the game. But this is part of the machine that I think wants the Miami Hurricanes in the college football playoffs. Because this is the first time ever, or not ever, the first time since they were the actual U that they've been relevant. And they've been dying for it ever since. Hell, Michael Irvin went full fucking quad for the Miami Hurricanes in this game. He was on all fours. Sweating. He had the cocaine sweats watching the Miami Hurricanes, which, by the way, is freaking hilarious. I've never gone full quad for a football team. Disclaimer: I might have done that when the Cowboys won Sunday night at 1 a.m. Now this is just like you go back and look at their schedule. I want to bring you through their schedule, and you tell me if this sounds impressive to you. You tell me if this is number 6 in the country. Because I know team... Shit, I'm probably going to look that up right now. Let's look this up right now. Because I'm going to compare this. This might be a Shatter the Script moment for the ages here. And so you tell me if this is something that you would consider a top 6 team in the country. So, okay, this was, yeah. This is this year. Gosh, sorry. So confusing. Miami, week 1, SEC Florida. Pretty good, right? Florida looked terrible. A&M beat them with their backup quarterback. Florida's just like, they're pretty good. I mean, like, they're not pretty good, but that's a decent win. That's it. I'm not going to douse them for that. Florida A&M. Ball State, South Florida. So now they're 4-0, right? Out of those 4 games, which of those are eye-opening to you to where it's like, damn, Miami might be for real? I mean, maybe you could argue, they went into the swamp and they beat 6-year quarterback who can't beat out freshman DJ Lagway. Shout out Willis, Texas, for the starting job in Florida. They're struggling. I mean, that's a DB list candidate, a down bad candidate, Florida Gators. So I'm just going to say it's an average win. So argue 1, but 4 of those wins ain't worth a shit. And, of course, they blow out every single one of those teams. And you got 2 weeks ago, Virginia Tech, the Hail Mary that, by rule, I mean, they're going to put in their rules expert and tell you what they want you to hear, but by rule, we saw this, I keep talking about this, in the Packers and Seahawks game when, I think it was a regular season game, might have been a wild card game, a couple years ago. Shit, I'm old. I'm going to look at this game and go, fuck, like this was almost 10 years ago. The same thing happened. Both players come down with the ball at the same time. By rule, it goes to the receiver. In this case, it went to the defender. So the Hail Mary, where Miami won 38-34, that Virginia Tech threw to win the game, that was caught by both players, offense and defense, was ruled an interception for Miami. Ball game over. Miami survives. They remain 5-0. All right? Is Virginia Tech a good win? Rhetorically. California beat Auburn. Is Auburn any good? No. Their quarterback throws 4 interceptions a game. California is an average opponent that's definitely not going to win more than 7 or 8 games. It's just one of those average teams. You should beat them, especially for a big-time brand like Miami, who probably pulled in a lot of NIL money. They, like I said, survived 39-38 on some cheese. I mean, on some major cheese, in my opinion. Which of those wins are convincing? And keep in mind that those last 2 games, water break, excuse me. Those last 2 games are luck. I mean, shit. I mean, I'm trying to be fair here. I'm looking at it and going, by rule, the Virginia Tech one, that's a touchdown for Virginia Tech. By rule, in my opinion. A rules expert's going to come in here and debunk me like I'm anti-vax. But then you got California, legal man downfield. That one you can't debunk me on. I've done my own research on that one. There's 2 linemen 7 yards downfield standing 2 yards within the end zone, and they're at the 4-yard line. So I don't agree with it. So now you got Miami number 6 in the country. Do they sound like a number 6 team in the country? No, they don't. That's the answer. They don't sound like a number 6 team. So I'll get into where I actually rank them, because you do have to respect an undefeated team. You do have to respect Cam Ward, who's having a great season. But going into their next couple of games, they play Louisville this upcoming week. Not an easy matchup. Upset alert. Louisville is not a bad team. Florida State, poo-poo. Duke, Georgia Tech. Upset alert, Georgia Tech. Wake Forest and Syracuse. Upset alert, Syracuse. So 3 upset alerts, in my opinion. I think that's enough at Miami. Do they finish in the college football playoff? I think the committee wants them to, is my point that I'm trying to get at. So I guess we'll see. Maybe I'm a hater. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should be ostracized. Maybe I should be taken out to Miami currently where it's at right now, and they can give me a BBL and a lip filler. I don't know. You tell me. The audience should respond. It's a free platform, you know? Okay, it's top 25. Now, this one is just by popular demand, I guess, because there was so many upsets last week. I'm going to go off the top of my head. I think I can remember it because I sent it to basically everybody. But the weekend of college football last week in week 6 was so exciting. And then you got October 12th, which has thousands of matchups that are just exciting to watch. Ole Miss, LSU, the Red River Shootout, Oregon and Ohio State. Those are 3 primary big-time games. October 12th is just kind of stacked, loaded. Florida and, I think it's Georgia. I believe Florida and Georgia are playing, which that's a big game geographically. Like, this is just an exciting week of college football. Well, last week, I don't know if you can top that. Tennessee upset by Pig Suey. Then you got A&M upset Missouri. Then you had California go down to the wire with Miami at 2 a.m. football. Then you had Alabama lose to Vanderbilt. And I've been missing, I think, one more in there, and I'll let the audience yell out loud while they're listening to this. Dude, you're missing this game. That's hard to top. But after all that, you had, I believe, ranks like 8, 9, 10, and 11. USC and Michigan. USC and Michigan both lost. So, 8, 9, 10, and 11, and 12, I believe, almost all lost. And you had the best win of the weekend, which call me biased, but the best win of the weekend was Texas A&M. They were at home. They were favorites to win that game. Betting-wise, it's not the best win. But looking at it in terms of what's expected from Missouri and what the narrative's been for Texas A&M, this was huge for Mike Elko in the program. This was huge for the Connor Wegman truthers out there like myself. This was huge for the SEC implications as which, popcorn alert, get a load of this, and then we'll get back into the top 25. Get a load of this. Number one in the SEC currently in standings, they're already 3-0 as the Texas A&M Aggies. 3-0. The rest of their schedule is pretty poresome outside of LSU and Texas at the end of the year. Their SEC matchups are very subpar. It's like Mississippi State and Auburn and South Carolina. They can win all three of those games. LSU's in there. I think they can win that one, but that's like the one they really got to win because once they go play Texas at the end of the year, let's say they won those games that they're supposed to win, they're going in with one loss to Notre Dame from week one when Connor Wegman was sick or something. Well, who's the favorite to win the SEC right now and looks better than anybody? It feels like we haven't watched them in 3 weeks, but the Texas Longhorns. So when the Texas Longhorns and the A&M Aggies meet, this is going to be the biggest game of the freaking decade. But it gets better. Texas and Texas A&M could play each other back to back. The final game of the season, which they'll both be one loss or undefeated, and then A&M's in the lead for the SEC standings. So is Texas. Even with that loss, they're still number 1 and 2 in the SEC because Georgia and Alabama have lost. They play each other in the SEC conference championship on the following week. Now, you want to talk about absolute cinema? It's unbelievable. And one of the things that's going to be interesting with that is they haven't played each other in like 10 years. So imagine a back-to-back Texas Longhorn, Texas A&M rivalry game with huge playoff implications. And could you imagine, this would be freaking hilarious to me, if they played each other back-to-back and then in the college football playoff rankings, they were matched up against one another at some point. So they play each other 3 times in one season. Just putting that out there. Back to the top 25. All right, so you had number 1 in the AP polls. This is the latest to come out for week 7. You had Texas at number 1, Ohio State at number 2, number 3, Oregon, number 4, Penn State, and number 5, Georgia. So I'll go through those 5 very quickly. Texas belongs at number 1, absolutely. I think, like I said, it feels like we haven't seen them in 3 weeks, but Arch Manning has been kind of their quarterback since Ewers has been out. Ewers is coming back to beat the brakes off of Oklahoma this week in a Red River shootout. Oklahoma is not ready for the warm welcome that Ewers is going to give to them. Ewers needs to do what Weigman did against Missouri and prove that he is their guy. Ohio State, I haven't seen much of this team yet. I really haven't. But from the analysts that I listen to, Ohio State seems to be the real deal. I think they belong in that 2 to 4-ish category on this list. Oregon scares the shit out of me. So I predicted them in the Stats and Scars episode to beat Ohio State and then have like a really weak loss later in the year. Boise State played them very, very close, if I remember correctly. But Oregon does not convince me at all. They don't move mountains for me. Water break number 2. Oregon doesn't move mountains for me. Oregon seems like a type of team that, an old Pac-12 team is what it feels like. And now they got to go in and they got to play Ohio State, in which they do get to play at home, but I just don't think they're a number 3 team. I think they're there right now because they're undefeated, but the committee is looking at this top 10 going, this shit ain't over. This shit ain't over one bit because Penn State played Bowling Green close. Georgia lost to Alabama. Alabama lost to Vanderbilt this weekend. Miami doesn't seem convincing like I mentioned before, which they are at number 6. Number 7 is Alabama because there's really nowhere else to put them. Number 8 is Tennessee because there's really nowhere else to put them, which granted, I think Alabama's going to win out and they'll be fine. But Tennessee losing to Arkansas. Arkansas doesn't have a Vanderbilt quarterback. Vanderbilt's quarterback's electric. He can be a spoiler. He can be a sneaker. So when Tennessee loses to a team like Arkansas away, that's huge for Arkansas, for one. Congrats. I now get better Christmas presents come December. But that's a bad loss, man. I had them as some people had them favorites to win the entire thing. Colin Cowherd. Number 9, Ole Miss. I still think they're kind of frauds. I think they're players in the SEC, but if somebody can find a way to, like Kentucky, who has a great SEC defense, plays them, I think they struggle and they lose. Question is, do they play one of those teams? Water break number 3. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all these teams and butcher you guys, but I want to highlight 2 or 3 more. Let's do that. Notre Dame at number 11. They're tied with Ohio State. Why is Notre Dame in there? Why are they in the top 18? Their best win, I guess it looks better now, but Texas A&M was a completely different team week 1 than they are right now. That's their best win. And their worst loss is Northern Illinois. They didn't throw a touchdown pass until week 4 with Riley Leonard. It's media bias to put them at number 11 because if you look at Texas A&M, that's one team that should be either right behind them or directly in front of them. They're going to keep Notre Dame because Notre Dame's going to keep winning because they have a weak schedule, but they're going to keep Notre Dame just a little bit in front of A&M because 1, media bias, and 2, they beat them week 1. Bad news for Texas A&M. Who knows? Maybe the committee will overthrow that. So Notre Dame. The other one, Boise State. I'll get into them a little later, but they have the next freaking Barry Sanders at running back. Ashton Genty, who is choosing legacy over money, which is why I decided to stay in Boise. Now, there's a lot of, I guess, Gen Zers right now that are saying, if you think Boise State is much-watch football, then, like, basically you're an idiot. Am I crazy? Boise State used to be long ago, but consistently, like, I remember our 12-1 season, 11-2 season when Kellen Moore was dicing it up at Boise State. They are not a bad school. They just got the blue field, and it's kind of like weird, but Boise State, man, like, am I old? Because they are must-watch television when they're good. Look at Ashton Genty. That dude has over 1,000 rushing yards in 5 games. He's my Heisman candidate winner. And then you got let's go one more. Michigan at 24. Okay. You got what's his name? Jack Tuttle. He had Dave Portnoy sounding off on X about Jack Tuttle. Man. He's ass. All the Michigan quarterbacks are ass. This team will not be ranked the rest of the year after this week. They're going to be at best 7-5. No, I'm sorry, at best 8-4. But I should not have to see Michigan ranked the rest of the year. I'm sorry, they shouldn't. Which Will Rogers in Washington? That's an underrated guy. That's an underrated quarterback. He's from the SEC, Mississippi State. He went over to Washington. That's a pretty good transfer pickup. Will Rogers has always been pretty solid. He's a veteran. That's a good filler quarterback after Michael Penix left. I'm going to ramble too much on the top 25, so we're going to switch topics into our next one. Let's go into the NFL, or the Shatter the Script segment. And I'm falling behind here, too, because I've got, all these links I got to put on here. Shatter the Script, click on the link and follow us and subscribe and blah, blah, blah. This would be a good time for me to read an ad for you guys. I was almost tempted to do that on the fly, but I should shout out this water because this water is excellent right now. Okay. CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. Whew. Okay, try not to go on a tangent on this one. I know everybody knows the Dallas Cowboys are my team. Yes. I watched that game against Pittsburgh last night. And knowing the gauntlet that the Dallas Cowboys are going to get themselves into. They got to play the Lions this week. They're going by. Then they play San Francisco. Then they play Atlanta, the Philadelphia Eagles, and a couple other really good teams. I think Washington now is included in that gauntlet, seeing that they're 4-1. This is going to be a challenging time for Dallas, who's very injury-riddled. So going into Pittsburgh, playing against arguably one of a top 3 NFL defense is not an easy thing to do. Let alone the game was delayed an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. I think game start time was like 8:45 p.m. Central Time, so 9:45 at night in Pittsburgh. And then you had them finish the game close to 1 a.m. And if you watch this game, it was vintage Dallas Cowboys versus Pittsburgh Steelers. This is the most common Super Bowl matchup in the NFL history. Dak threw an awful interception in the red zone, which he had 3 turnovers in this game. Outside of that, I think he played phenomenal because one of the interceptions I'm never going to blame him for. He threw a deep shot trying to make a play, and it was kind of a fight for the ball a little bit. He threw it to Tolbert. I disagree with that, but Tolbert had a pretty good game, caught the game-winning touchdown. Dak, I thought, played good. He had that odd interception, and then he was strip sacked by T.J. Watt, or their pass rush, not T.J. Watt. He was strip sacked, which happens all the time when you play the Pittsburgh Steelers. After the interception, CeeDee Lamb walks over and mouths something to Dak Prescott, who just had a crucial interception, right? And a lot of people are going, well, do we have any lip readers out here? What did he say to CeeDee? You can tell CeeDee Lamb's not having it with Dak Prescott, who CeeDee Lamb thinks is complete ass. No. Like if you're if you're a lip reader, CeeDee Lamb is saying, jump ball, I got you. Like jump ball, throw the jump ball. Like, hey, we can fix it. Dak's sitting there going, I'm an idiot. Why would I throw that? I never make that mistake. I'm a veteran of 9 years. Never throw an interception in the red zone. It's killer. You need this game. You have to be better. That's what his stare is for. It's not get out of my face. He needs CeeDee Lamb. Him and Jake Ferguson are the only pass catchers you got that have established themselves. So there is no disconnect between CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. After the game, CeeDee Lamb is all smiles. Hey, a lot of y'all counted us out. Guess y'all should learn how to count, sort of thing. Like their connection, dude. If you've got a disconnection after having like 130 receptions last year, it's just, think of the logic. It just doesn't make sense, right? There is no disconnect between CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. As an avid Cowboys fan who's been realistically paying attention to this team, it's just not there. This is a struggle of coverage. This is a struggle of, well, CeeDee Lamb is our top wide receiver who can gain separation. The only really threat downfield. We were out Brandon Cooks this game. They're going to dial the shit out of CeeDee Lamb. Always going to have a safety high over the top of Lamb. Did you see any deep ball passes to Lamb on Sunday night if you watched that game, if you stayed up? No. Dak Prescott had one of the best throws of the night where he threaded it on like 3rd and 12 or something like that in the sideline on top of the corner and underneath the safety on the sideline, toe tap catch to move the chains. 3rd down king, Dak Prescott, right? Like, this is not an issue. This is not an issue of like relationship between CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. This is an issue between we don't have any talent. Shit, our 2022 year was more talented in this, and I had heavy complaints about it. You're walking in with practically nothing outside of CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson. You just, I guess, found a running back in Rico Dowdle. So this narrative that there's disconnect between CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, save for a 4th or 5th time, is not true. They're going to be fine. They need to be trade candidates to maybe field in another guy that can take off some pressure from CeeDee Lamb, because they've screwed up Brandon Cooks' knee, by the way. Excuse me. The medical guy talked about this on Stats and Scars. This is a big problem. But Jalen Tolbert has kind of emerged as a trustworthy Patrick Creighton-looking wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. He caught the game-winning catch. Nothing to see there. Nothing to see there between CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. Don't listen to the media. That's my Shatter the Script statement right there. All right. Man, I am 2 for 2 on covering my Shatter the Script topics in 30 minutes. I just think I've got it dialed, man. I got it dialed. So before we get into our next segment, the 2020 vision, I want to talk about. Well, I guess I want to mention. The hurricane over there in Florida. I talked about it a little bit on my story this week. Prayers out, man. I know it's so. I guess typical to say that, and that everybody says. I hate that narrative where it's like, if somebody says prayers out, you're just going to send words out there. No, it's prayer. And as a Christian, I believe in the power of prayer, and that's something that I want to, say out in the open on this podcast, is that that's who I am. I identify and have accepted Jesus, and I believe in the power of Jesus, and for that to help the people of Florida, because back to back hurricanes. When's the last time you heard of an October hurricane? Right before, I'm not going to get down a rabbit hole, but right before the election. It's just weird. And it's already flooded down crazy. You're seeing stuff on social media, a lot of jokes, a lot of stuff. Those people lost their homes, man. I don't know if they're going to get back to them anytime soon. And then you have helicopters disrupting. Man, you got to pray for them. Florida is a wonderful state. It's a great vacation spot. They have prestigious college universities over there, military outfits over there. That's Donald Trump's home state, which could be important, but and I'm just saying that because that's where he's from, in terms of the polls or whatever, as his candidacy. I just think that as a fantastic state as it is, that we need to have them in our thoughts and prayers and offer help as best we can, because FEMA's not going to give it to them, and neither is the administration. So that's all really I'm going to say about it. But before I had to talk about it a little bit before I went to the next segment, talk about the privilege of talking about football and whatnot. I just think that they need prayer right now. They need the power of Jesus to go in and help them and heal them and give them their homes back, give them power, give them a new place to rest their heads. I mean, kids, wives, husbands, grandparents, dogs, cats. I mean, all of it, man. It's total destruction. And I believe right as we speak, I'm recording this kind of middle of the week, it's hitting them hard. So, all right, 2020 vision. There was a lot of candidates for the 2020 vision this week. And, like last week, I chose Kirk Cousins. I recorded later in the week, so recency bias kind of showed Kirk Cousins balling versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This week, there was plenty of candidates. I mean, you had dink and dunk, Patrick Mahomes kind of slicing and dicing for almost 30 completions without any receivers for over 300 and something yards. You had Joe Flacco reaching 19 miles per hour on a 20-something yard run. He went over 40 attempts and over 30 completions for over 350 yards. He looks better than AR's ever going to be, to be quite honest with you. You had Lamar Jackson going crazy against the Cincinnati Bengals. Dak Prescott, outside of his 3 interceptions, he looked great through the air outside of those. Baker Mayfield from last week in the Kirk Cousins matchup. There's a lot of quarterbacks to choose from. But there's one I didn't mention out of all those, and I think your 2020 Vision quarterback of the week, despite the loss, is Joe Burrow, Joe Shiesty. Now, yes, does he dress like a lesbian? Yes, he does. But I honestly need a fit check before his last game, because this guy was 30 of 39 and I think over 300-something yards. Look at the official stats for you guys right here. But this dude, here we go. 30 of 39, 392 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. And his running mate, his 2 top receivers, Jamar Chase caught 10 out of 12 targets, 193 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and dropped a 40 bomb on my head in fantasy football. Luckily, I had T. Higgins to compensate and beat the median. Caught 9 out of 14 targets, 83 yards, and 2 touchdowns as well. So double tutties for wide receiver 1 and 2 for the Bengals, 5 for Joe Burrow in a loss which is why I'm highlighting him. And the Bengals just moved to 1-4, but the argument that Joe Burrow is just playing flat out terrible and he's the reason they're 1-4, no. Joe Burrow is playing fantastic. I mean, I'm looking at his stuff here. Week 4, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, over 230 yards. Week 3, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 40 attempts passing, over 300 yards passing. Week 2, over 250 yards passing, no turnovers, 2 touchdowns. Week 1, that was bad. That's his only really bad week. But he's playing good football. He's playing, can he do more? What more do you want than 5 touchdowns and 400 yards and like a freaking 80% completion percentage? What more do you want? You lost that game. So I'll bring up the chart here because this kind of analyzes, my middle of the field agenda, where if you can hit the middle of the field, you are a 2020 quarterback of the week. So here you go. You can see the absolute nuke that he threw to pass to the right hash mark to Jamar Chase, and the amount of touchdowns that are in the blue highlighted here. You can see the stats tonight, so I'm not lying to you guys, but a lot of middle of the field throws, a lot of things around, again, like the Kirk Cousins one I did last week, 5 to 10 yards down the field. Baltimore's defense is hit or miss this year, but they're a contender, and it's a divisional game, so throwing this amount of yards against a divisional opponent is not the easiest thing in the world, plus it's the NFL, so you're not going to see a stat line like this more than 3 or 4 times this year from really any quarterback, so you have to highlight it. Of course, like I said, there were other candidates, but Joe Burrow, and they need to update his picture because he's blonde. He looks like Dash grown up from The Incredibles. But you don't see a shit ton of like eye-opening. Like you're never going to see more than 6 or 7 completions, more than 15 yards down the field. But I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 more than 10 yards down the field. A couple more actually. So his 1 interception came 5 yards down the field on a slant, I believe. But he was cooking, man. Like he's playing worth his money. The defense has got to find a way to compensate and show up for this guy. And this is what happens. My Shatter the Script take for this segment. This is what happens when you pay your quarterback a boatload of money. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing to pay your quarterback. A lot of people freak out, but guess what? The NFL makes more money every single year, increasing the salary cap, increasing the amount of money that you're paid. So every time that you hear he made the most money in the history of the NFL or the most money for his position in history, it's because the NFL is gaining more money every year. It's a natural economic outcome of the market. It has nothing to do with, oh, that's his value. Well, the value dictates, for example, Jetta was paid $36 million a year. Right after that, CeeDee Lamb's paid $35 million a year. You're probably not going to pay more money to CeeDee Lamb than Justin Jefferson, but based on the market, he's right there. Here's a better example. That's a lot of money. A quarterback used to make that amount of money. In just less than 3 years, you had all these quarterbacks are on the 55 million timeline. And then because the Dallas Cowboys waited so long, now you have a $60 million quarterback, the highest paid player in NFL history. Of course, Jerry Jones wanted that narrative. Of course, it has to be Dak Prescott, the most hated quarterback in the NFL. This is just the thing where it's you waited that long for the salary cap to increase, so you have to compensate for the market. It has nothing to do. If you paid Dak Prescott 8 months ago in the 2023 season, he would have gotten $52 million. He would have been right there with Jared Goff, which is a good contract. So this narrative that, oh, he's not playing worth his money or whatever, and yeah, it's ridiculous that they're getting paid this much, but it's just a broken narrative. And you guys, I would call it a casual way of looking at it, and it's my responsibility for a guru like me to look at this and go, hey, by the way, this narrative, when you see this ESPN post that gets 120,000 likes and 18 million views on X, and everybody's liking it and sharing it with their friends 2 or 3 days after I've already seen it, I mean, it doesn't move me. It's for clicks. It's not, if you understand the market and how the economical field works in the NFL, you would understand it. So Joe Burrow, 2020 Vision quarterback of the week, hit in the middle of the field, throwing the long ball, dropping nukes, and still losing. So shout out to Joe Burrow this week. All right. So let's get into my 12th men segment. Now, this is going to be a fun one, and I kind of touched on a little bit about the college football top 25. These are just, in my opinion, the top 12 teams in the country, and they'll kind of end up being there towards the end of the year. And it's a little shaky, so bear with me. But let's get into it. There's the banner at the bottom if you guys are watching. 12th men. Shout out Texas A&M Aggies. But we'll start at number 12. I think this is a fun one. Number 12, Boise State. Boise State, with their running back, who I already mentioned, over 1,000 yards rushing in like 5 or 6 games or whatever. This dude is incredible. He's my Heisman favorite right now to win it as a running back. I don't feel like we've seen a running back win a Heisman in a while. I need to ask that guy Brandon Walker from Barstool. He's a wizard when it comes to knowing Heisman candidates. But I got Boise State at number 12. I think they are a potential to sneak their way into the college football playoff. They played Oregon close. I mean, I don't know. They're a very fun team. They're dropping like 50 or 60 points. I just think this team is convincing enough to overcome teams like BYU, Iowa State, Notre Dame. Like, not saying they're going to beat those teams, but in the polls, I think they're going to convince that they're going to reach the top 12 teams in the country. And later on the season, as I master this list, we'll construct a college football playoff top 12, in my opinion, as we get closer. It's too early right now, so just top 12 teams. Number 11, the Texas A&M Aggies. I talked about it. I think 15 is a pretty bad spot to, in my opinion. I think they should have been higher. I think they have better wins. I think they've overcame a lot with a backup true freshman quarterback in Marcel Reed. I just think that this team's win versus Missouri was extremely convincing. And when you look at the outlook for the rest of the year, they're on a bye week this week, so people are going to forget about them. They may slide a spot or two. But this is one of those matchups the rest of the year where if A&M does what they're supposed to do, which I predicted way earlier in the season, they'll be going into Texas with at most two losses, but most likely just one. And if they can beat LSU, they are going to be one loss, I think 9-1, 10-1, heading into the Texas game, who is also going to be around that win-loss record. Number 10, Iowa State. I really haven't been able to watch this team, but they're winning. They're undefeated. And for the sake of time, I'm just going to skip over them. But as long as they keep winning, they should continue to stay around that 8 to 12 range. Their wins aren't as convincing as other teams. I do have an SEC bias, yes. So number 9, Ole Miss. Now, they're here because there's nowhere else to put them. Somebody's got to go on a streak. Somebody's got to do a convincing win to kind of prove me otherwise. That loss to Kentucky wasn't the worst loss in the world, honestly. I mean, Kentucky is not a bad SEC school, but when they go into Ole Miss and beat you with all that talk that you did as Lane Kiffin and Jackson Dart, it's kind of embarrassing because you were a top 7 football team at the time and a favorite to maybe compete for the SEC championship. Well, now you're out of that narrative. So you're at 9, and I don't think you're going to get into the top 5 again this season. Number 8, Miami. Believe me, like I already talked about it earlier, I would have been completely disrespecting them if I didn't put them in the top 12. But I really think that if I was literally putting these ranks together and going, would this team beat Miami? Yes. Would this one? Yes. What about this one? I actually think they would destroy Miami. Okay. But for their schedule, I think you got to put them at 8. And then the upset alerts that I mentioned earlier with like Syracuse and Louisville and and maybe Georgia Tech, which I doubt it. We'll disregard that. But so Louisville and Syracuse, those are your two biggest threats the rest of the year to give you your first loss. And you almost lost to Virginia Tech, and you almost lost to California. They just don't move me. But they're going to be at 8 because they're undefeated, and the rest of their schedule dictates that they're going to remain undefeated. And then they'll probably be in the top 5 once the season concludes and enters into the playoffs. Tennessee is in front of them at number 7. They lost to Arkansas. They didn't look great offensively. I think they kind of poured their hearts out against Oklahoma, and Oklahoma will beat you to your knees on defense this year, which raises concerns for the Red River Shootout. But Tennessee's in there. I still am very high on this team. They're a young team, quarterback-wise. They have a great head coach, in my opinion, one of the top 3 in the SEC. Elko's making his way up there for the Aggies, but I'm still a believer in Tennessee. I wouldn't be freaking out. I think they're better than what Vanderbilt showed against Alabama. They're more talented. That's a team that I think clearly would beat Miami, in my opinion. Number 6, Clemson. Clemson had that one really bad loss to Georgia, but the rest of the way, they have looked great. And Dabo's kind of revived his narrative. So I'm actually kind of happy that they're winning because Clemson was always fun when they were in the national championship and in those high-tier bowl games. So having Clemson in the top number 6 is a little different of me because I'm not the biggest advocate of Dabo Swinney in Clemson, but having them in the discussion is fun for college football. So number 6, Clemson. And then you got number 5, Georgia. Georgia moved mountains for me when I thought they were going to get blown out by Alabama, and then they came all the way back and were close to winning that football game, showing that, hey, when Carson Beck gets rolling, who really I don't think is that good of a quarterback, I really don't. I think he's a product of the talent around him. But Georgia has had a lot of off-the-field issues. I think 24 since 2023, 24 automobile incidents off the field resulting in arrest. That's crazy. I mean, I don't know what Kirby Smart, I don't know if I guess he should be held responsible for that as a head coach, but another, I think a receiver there, Colby Young, I think was his name, made headlines with another incident, and it's distracting for the team. So when you're going to play Alabama and the media says, there's no Saban or whatever, and Kalen DeBoer coaches and has their players play their best game, that's why Alabama is number 4 for me. Alabama's loss to Vanderbilt, yes, that's embarrassing. That's one of those things where there's really no talking around it, but do I think they run the table the rest of the year? This is one of those losses that just kind of knocks some sense into your program for the rest of the year. And you've already won that Georgia team, which is an accelerant to your team's locker room. So you have Bama the rest of the year, I think, just on a mission to destroy whoever's in front of them. And I think this is a great thing for football that they lost because it kind of has this balancing scale of this is a toss-up, this is not. And Bama's number 4. I think at the end of the year, they will convince the committee, per usual, that they belong in the top 6 and they'll be a contender for the SEC championship if, say, Texas A&M folds or Texas folds or Georgia. So they're slightly ahead of Bama Georgia because they beat Georgia. Number 3, Oregon. I'm looking at Oregon and thinking Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, and possibly Texas A&M are 4 teams that can beat Oregon at the moment. I don't think their defense is strong. I think they're playing weaker opponents and beating up on them, but they're having some issues in the red zone versus Michigan State, who could barely move the football. They're having very, very close wins in sicko hours, which if you're unfamiliar with sicko hours, that's when you play after 9 o'clock at night on a Saturday. And if you're up watching those games, shout out to you. That's a true football fan. But I'm only putting them there because they are undefeated and they're about to play my number 2 team, Ohio State, which is one of the biggest games of the weekend, which is where College Game Day is. But Oregon does not convince me yet really at all that they should be here, I don't know. I have to just leave them at 3 and see what happens. It'll probably change after they drop one to Ohio State this weekend. Which Ohio State, I haven't watched a single game of Ohio State this year. Besides, I think the first drive between Ohio State and Marshall, where Marshall scored. So, and then after that, they exploded for like 60 unanswered points. But they have so much talent. I'm telling you, Quinshon Judkins, the wide receiver with the weird last name that starts with an E. Will Howard at quarterback. They still have one of the best coaches in college football, tenure-wise. Ohio State belongs at number 2, and I think in the AP poll they had them at 1. But my number 1 team is, without a doubt, it's the Texas Longhorns. They have so much depth at quarterback with Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, and Trey Owens, who's a freshman this year. Like, these 3 guys are going to continue to put your program on top for the next 8 or 9 years. Or that might be a stretch, but correct me on the math if I'm wrong. But for a while. And then you have more recruits like that because Sarkisian is doing an outstanding job with the Texas Longhorns. But, Isaiah Bond and Ewers, like, coming back for the Oklahoma Sooner Red River shootout, I think Ewers makes a statement. I'm predicting a 45-27 win for the Texas Longhorns. And I just don't see them being their biggest matchup. Yes, it's going to be Texas. Texas's biggest matchup is going to be Georgia. And I think next week, after their Red River shootout, that's a potential for a loss for sure. Oklahoma State, kind of like I mentioned earlier, beats you up on offense with their defense. So I really think that Texas is going to have to buckle it up, because their next 3 games are no cakewalk. It's Oklahoma, who has a great defense, Georgia the following week, and then Vanderbilt, who's kind of a spoiler this year. From there on out, you can rest assured that Texas is going to be ready to go versus Texas A&M at the end of the year and for the SEC Conference Championship if they make it that far. So that is my 12th men. I hope it was good. Sooner or later, I'll find a really good kind of layout for you guys can see that as I go through it and kind of reveal 12 and then 11 and then 10. But it is a lot, so I'll probably just have 12 through 6 for everyone to see and highlight a team or 2 and then go through my top 6 and why for the sake of time, because I don't, hearing me ramble might not be the funnest thing, and your ears might get a 2 ears, 1 mouth, man. But hey, Saturday's payday, October 12th, some big ass games for college football. And if you are an NFL fan, and only an NFL fan, you're missing out, because that was me the last 4 or 5 years. I just kind of skipped over college football. This is me. I play golf on Saturdays now. Dude, I'm like rushing to get back if I go play golf in the morning to catch the 11 a.m. game. I'm sacrificing strokes so I can catch the 11 a.m. game all the way. This past weekend, I watched it College Game Day from early in the morning all the way till 2 or 1 o'clock a.m. for the Miami Cal game. Woke up, watched the London game at 9:30, which was not advertised throughout the week. So I didn't even know it was happening until I got some alerts on my phone in the morning on Sunday when I was hungover. Watched football on Sunday all the way until about 12 Central Time, about 12:45 to where the Cowboys defeated the Pittsburgh Steelers. Football guy, so I watch a lot of it. All right, well, I appreciate you guys joining this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really would like some feedback. I'm going to be posting polls throughout the week just to kind of see, hey, you guys, if you like this, I'll keep doing it. If you want any tweaks to it, hit my line, reply to the story, give me some ideas. But this is my imagination, is kind of shattering the script, attacking those controversial subjects, and we're going to get better every week. And I'm really enjoying this. Like Stats and Scars, Challenge the Script, this one, 3 different episodes that give you a lot of context, and then clips and content throughout the week on TikTok and Instagram. So if you are a first-time listener, you made it to the end of the episode, I appreciate you staying here, and I hope you share this with your friends and you follow the platform. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube at Shatter the Script. All our episodes are iconed to have challenge. If you're looking for Challenge the Script, there's a title for it, and a picture. If you're looking for my episode, It's the golden one. If you're looking for the stats and scars, it has its own banner. And so that way it's easier for you guys to tell which content you're looking for. So we kind of attack all facets. And then, of course, on TikTok and Instagram, at Shatter the Script as well. And on X, this is the rare one, STS_pod. Now, X is one of those things where I'm constantly throwing things out. So if you're looking for just commentary, that's the way to go. I still post on there more than any other platform. So X is the way to go. But a lot of people like those pictures and videos. Those will be on Instagram and TikTok. All right. Thank you for joining. This was another edition of the Shatter the Script podcast. I'm your host, Jared May, and I will be back next Sunday with another edition attacking controversial subjects. So appreciate you guys joining, and I will catch y'all later. Oh, cheddar!